The Well of Treasures. Long ago, a group of merchants set out from the great city of Benares on a long journey through the desert. Their wise leader walked at the front of the caravan, his eyes always watching the road ahead. Behind him followed 5 other merchants with their carts piled high with goods. The sun beat down mercilessly, and their water bags were nearly empty. Just when they thought they could go no further, they spotted an old, crumbling well by the roadside. Water! Water! The merchants cried with relief. They rushed to the well, but when they looked inside, it was completely dry. "We must dig," said the wise leader calmly. "There may be water deep below." So they rolled up their sleeves and began to dig. As they dug deeper, instead of water, they found something extraordinary. First, they struck a layer of shining iron. Then copper gleaming like sunset. Then silver, bright as moonlight. And finally, they hit a layer of pure, glittering gold. The merchants could not believe their eyes. "We are rich! We are rich!" they shouted, dancing with joy around the well. But then they found even more sparkling pearls, glowing rubies, and precious jewels of every color. The wise merchant looked at the treasure and smiled. "This is more than enough for all of us," he said contentedly. "Let us fill our carts and go home to our families. We are truly blessed." He began carefully loading the jewels into his cart. "Stop!" cried the 5 greedy merchants. "There must be even more treasure below. Why settle for gold when there might be diamonds? Why stop when we could have everything?" The wise merchant shook his head. "My friends, we have more than enough. Digging too deep is dangerous. Please, let us go while fortune smiles upon us." But the greedy merchants laughed at him and kept digging, deeper and deeper and deeper. Suddenly, the ground began to tremble. A terrible rumbling shook the earth, and from the deepest part of the well, 2 blazing red eyes appeared. An enormous golden serpent, the mighty Naga king who guarded the treasures of the earth, rose from the depths, his scales burning like fire, his ruby crown gleaming with fury. "Who dares disturb my realm?" his voice thundered like a storm. The 5 greedy merchants screamed in terror and fled into the desert, leaving behind all the treasure they had gathered. But the wise merchant stood his ground. He bowed low before the great Naga king. "Mighty king," he said humbly, "I tried to warn them. We were grateful for what we found, but their greed drove them to dig too deep. I am sorry they disturbed your rest." The mighty Naga king looked at the humble merchant with respect. "You alone showed wisdom and gratitude," said the serpent king. "Take all the treasure you can carry, you have earned it. But remember this lesson: the earth gives generously to those who are grateful, but takes everything back from those who are greedy." The wise merchant loaded his carts with jewels and returned home to Benares, where he lived generously, sharing his wealth with all who needed it. Moral: be grateful for what you have. Greed destroys what contentment preserves. The Golden Goose. Long ago in the kingdom of Benares, there lived a kind Brahmin and his family, his wife and 3 lovely daughters named Nanda, Nandavati, and Sundari. They lived happily in a small cottage surrounded by mango trees and jasmine flowers. The father loved his family more than anything in the world, and every evening he would tell his daughters stories under the stars. But sadly, the father fell ill and passed away. Without him, the family had no one to provide for them. The mother tried her best, but their savings quickly ran out. The 3 daughters grew thin and hungry, and their once cheerful home became dark and cold. Neighbors brought food when they could, but it was never enough. The mother would cry softly at night, wondering how she would feed her children. Far away, in a shimmering lake surrounded by golden reeds, a magnificent goose awoke one morning with a strange feeling. His feathers glowed like pure gold in the sunlight. But what was truly extraordinary was that he remembered everything from his past life. He remembered being the Brahmin, and he remembered his beloved wife and daughters. "My family," he cried. "They must be suffering without me. I must find them and help them." And with a powerful beat of his golden wings, he took to the sky. The golden goose flew over forests and rivers until he found the little cottage where his family lived. He landed gently at the doorstep, and when the mother and daughters came outside, they gasped in wonder. "Do not be afraid," said the golden goose. "I was once your husband and father. I have been reborn in this form, and I have come to help you." He plucked a single golden feather from his wing and placed it in the mother's hands. "Sell this feather," he said. "It is pure gold, and will keep you comfortable for many weeks." And so it went. Every few weeks, the golden goose would fly back and leave one more precious feather. The family sold each one at the market, and soon their cottage was repaired, their kitchen was full, and the daughters had new clothes for the festivals. Nanda, Nandavati, and Sundari would dance with joy whenever they saw the golden goose approaching in the sky. Life was good again, and the family was happy and grateful for every single feather. But as the months passed, a dark seed of greed began to grow in the mother's heart. "What if the goose stops coming?" she whispered to herself one night. "What if he flies away forever? We should not wait for one feather at a time. Next time he comes, I will pluck all his feathers at once. Then we will have enough gold to last a lifetime." The 3 daughters overheard and begged her not to do it. "Mother, please," cried Nanda. "He gives us what we need. We must not be greedy." But the mother would not listen. When the golden goose next visited, the mother pounced. She grabbed the goose tightly and began pulling out feather after feather as fast as she could. "Mother, stop," the daughters cried, tears streaming down their faces. But it was too late. As each feather was torn away against the goose's will, something magical and terrible happened. The golden feathers turned plain and white, like ordinary goose feathers. Every last one. The mother stared at the pile of worthless white feathers in her hands, and the goose, now bare and shivering, looked at her with sad eyes. The poor goose, stripped of all his feathers, could not fly away. The mother, filled with shame and regret, kept him in a barrel until his feathers grew back. But when they did, they were ordinary white feathers, not a speck of gold remained. The moment the goose could fly again, he spread his white wings and soared into the sky, never to return. The daughters waved goodbye with tearful eyes. The mother watched him disappear and finally understood greed had destroyed the most precious gift of all. What was freely given with love could never be taken by force. Moral: be content with what you receive. Greed destroys the very gifts that generosity brings. The treasurer who walked through fire. Long ago, in the great city of Benares, there lived a kind and generous treasurer. He was the richest man in the kingdom, yet he cared more about helping others than keeping his gold. Every day, he opened 6 great halls where anyone who was hungry could come and eat a warm meal for free. The people of Benares loved him dearly, for his heart was as big as his fortune. One morning, as the treasurer was about to eat his breakfast, a holy sage arrived at his door. The sage had been deep in meditation for 7 long days without any food or water. He looked thin and weary, but his eyes shone with a gentle, peaceful light. He held out his simple alms bowl, hoping for something to eat. The treasurer smiled warmly and reached for his own breakfast to share. But hidden in the shadows, the evil spirit Mara was watching. Mara hated kindness and generosity. If this sage receives food today, he will grow even stronger in wisdom, Mara hissed. I must stop this gift at any cost. And with a wave of his dark hand, Mara created a terrible pit of blazing red-hot embers right in the middle of the treasurer's hall. The pit was enormous, deeper than a house, and filled with burning coals that glowed like a furnace. The flames leaped and crackled, and the heat was so fierce that the servants screamed and ran away in terror. Run, master, run, they cried. The floor has turned to fire. But the treasurer stood still, holding the bowl of food tightly. He looked at the holy sage waiting patiently on the other side, and his heart was filled not with fear, but with determination. I would rather walk through 1,000 fires than turn away someone in need, the treasurer declared bravely. No evil spirit can stop a kind heart. And with those words, he took a deep breath, held the bowl of food high above his head, and stepped boldly into the blazing pit of fire. Everyone who saw him gasped in horror, certain he would be burned to ashes. But the moment the treasurer's foot touched the fire, something magical happened. A magnificent lotus flower, as large as a chariot wheel, rose up through the flames to meet his step. Its petals were cool and soft, and golden pollen showered down like rain. With each step he took, another lotus appeared, creating a path of flowers through the blazing pit. The fire could not touch him at all. Mara watched in disbelief as the power of the treasurer's kindness was stronger than any evil magic. The treasurer crossed the pit of fire on the magical lotus flowers and gently placed the warm food into the sage's alms bowl. The holy sage smiled peacefully and blessed the treasurer. Then, rising gracefully into the air, the sage flew away toward the distant Himalayan mountains, leaving a trail of golden light behind him. The fiery pit vanished instantly, and Mara fled in shame, unable to overcome the treasurer's pure and generous heart. The servants and townspeople who had watched in amazement gathered around the treasurer, cheering and weeping with joy. The treasurer spoke gently to them all. "Remember this, dear friends. When you truly wish to do good, no obstacle is too great. Fear and doubt are the real fires we must walk through. But a heart full of kindness will always find a way." And from that day on, the people of Benares were inspired to be even more generous and kind to one another. Moral: a heart full of kindness can overcome any obstacle, no matter how great.